Hello, everybody. Let me know how my sound is. Sorry to hear, Lady D. Delphine. Get well soon. Yeah, I won't be chatting much myself. We'll wait a few minutes for others to come in. Before we start, I think I'm all set up. You able to hear me? Okay, I'll calm down. I'll take a breath too. Okay, I'm ready. Hear you good? Thank you, Marissa. Lori, good to see you. Good, good, good. Caroline, good to see you. Happy Easter. Okay, okay. It's 1 o'clock. I'll give it a couple more minutes and then we'll start. Besides, I need to get my coffee ready. Happy Resurrection Day. Okay, okay. Let us go. First story today is from the Yakima tribe here in Washington State and its interpretation of creation. In the beginning of the world, all the water Me Awa, the great chief above, lived up in the sky all alone. And when he decided to make the world, he went down to the shallow places in the water and began to throw up great handfuls of mud that became land. He piled some of the mud so high that it froze hard and made the mountains. When the rain came, it turned into ice and snow on top of the high mountains. Some of the mud was hardened into rocks. Since that time, the rocks had not changed. They have only become harder. The great chief above made trees grow on the earth, and also roots and berries. He made a man out of a ball of mud and told him to take fish from the waters and deer and other game from the forest. And when the man became lonely, the great chief above made a woman to be his companion and taught her how to dress skins, how to find bark and roots, and how to make baskets out of them. He taught her which berries to gather for food and how to pick them and dry them. He showed her how to cook the salmon and the game that the man brought. Once, when the woman was asleep, she had a dream, and in it she wondered what more she could do to please the man. And she prayed to the great chief above for help. He answered her prayer by blowing his breath on her and giving her something which she could not see or hear, smell or touch. This invisible something was preserved in a basket. Through it, the first woman taught her daughters and granddaughters the designs and skills which had been taught to her. But in spite of all the things the great chief above did for them, the new people quarreled. They bickered so much that Mother Earth was angry, and in her anger she shook the mountains so hard that those hanging over the narrow part of the big river fell down. The rocks, falling into the water, dammed the stream and also made rapids and waterfalls. Many people and animals were killed and buried under the rocks and mountains. Someday the great chief above will overturn these mountains and rocks. Then the spirits that once lived in the bones buried there will go back into them. At present, those spirits live in the tops of the mountains, watching their children on the earth and waiting for the great change which is to come. The voices of these spirits can be heard in the mountains at all times. Mourners who wail for their dead hear spirit voices reply, and thus they know that their lost ones are always near. We did not know all this by ourselves. We were told it by our fathers and grandfathers, who learned it from their fathers and grandfathers. No one knows when the great chief above will overturn the mountains, but we do know this. The spirits will return only to the remains of the people who in life kept the beliefs of their grandfathers. Only their bones will be preserved under the mountains. The end of that one. Aloha hoko mana. Renee, good to see you. I just finished off that one from Yakima tribe. Let's see. Hi, is the baby? The next one will be the water panther. Well, that one's kind of short. Now, let's go to something that's longer than 2 sentences long. Thunder Sun. by the Shawnee. Titled Look into the Heart for Beauty. Long, long ago, there was a woman who lived alone at the edge of her village. This young woman washed and combed her hair, brown hair with oils from animals, and her body was plump with their meat. She carried heavy chopped wood to her home alone, nurturing her strength every day. Her skin was smooth as corn silk, for she washed in the cold river water only once in a great while. Her clothes were washed in the river and left to dry while lying on the bushes in the hot sun. She was beautiful. She knew she was beautiful. She was too beautiful to have just any man. So she stayed by herself with her own admiration. She worked alone in the cornfields and returned, noticing reflection in the water baskets that she carried, and she lived alone in her beauty. Then one day she met a man. This man was like no one that she had ever known. His strength shone in his deep, piercing, brown-black eyes. This man had followed her from the river back to her home. His long black hair blew behind him as he walked beside her. He took the water baskets from her hands. His sleek, muscular body rippled as he walked beside her. His power echoed with his long stride. The feathers tied in his hair lifted with each step. His voice echoed through the air as he spoke. "Maiden, let me help you with your water carrying. Let me invite you to my home and to meet my family." And she followed him. She would not look into his eyes, yet she smiled. He walked beside her to his mother's wigwam, and he introduced her to his two sisters. They asked her to remain. She stayed with these people, for they appreciated her and needed her company. And she accepted this strong man as her man and became one of them. Her man would go out hunting all day while the women worked in the fields. He brought home plenty of meat, for he was an excellent hunter. The women were magical in their growing of corn, so they always had much corn bread, corn stew, and cornmeal. Life was good in this way. One day, the man came back later. Ads. One day the man came back later than usual, his hands bloody with cuts, his hair tangled in snarls, his moccasins torn. He told this story. "The hunt this day was difficult. The deer was quick. I shot and only wounded it. I prayed and followed it, but the deer ran to the sacred stream and ate plants that heal. Then it rolled in the sacred mud, and the wound disappeared. I knew that I was not to kill this one. So I returned to the hunting field and prayed to find another deer. The deer that came across the field was an older stag. It stared at me, and I knew that this stag would be the one killed. It was a fine deer with horns of great honor and sleekness of spirit. Then the stag leapt up over the hedge and was gone. I was fast and agile and soon found the tracks leading over the edge of a high cliff, but I did not notice the cliff, only the tracks. My body was badly bruised, hands cut, legs ripped as I freed myself from the hedge of thorns that saved me. I limped home without meat. He was tired, and he lay down on his bedroll with his head on his beautiful woman's lap, and she stroked his hair, feeling the weariness of his spirit. She noticed that his body was transforming. His breathing slowed as he turned into a gigantic snake. The beautiful woman felt the hair she was stroking shrink to scales that covered his head, and she carefully inched her way out from under his massive fanged head to escape outside. His mother saw this woman's fearful expression. "We are serpent people. We are good and wish you well. My son truly loves you. Yet if you feel that you can no longer stay here, then you should run away. But go quickly, for if my son wakes and knows that you have run from him, he will try to find you and bring you back. Run, run, and go quickly. and do not look back." The beautiful woman ran. Her legs moved quickly at first, and then as she thought about her good man, his kindness, his abilities, she slowed. Her mind argued with her heart. She sat down to rest, and she was tired and decided to close her eyes and pray. She had a dream, and she dreamt her pride was what brought her into this problem, and that her wisdom would get her home. And she awoke in a thunderstorm. Thunder Spirit called to her, and the deep rolling voice was deafening. She jumped up with her hands over her ears. The great voice echoed across the land. "Run, run, run! The snake man is behind you. He shall catch you." The beautiful woman ran from the fear of her soul pounding in her head, and she heard the terrible rustling of the serpent man. She let her legs move across the mountains, and soon she came to a lake near her home. There, standing around the lake, were 3 handsome men. The tallest put out his hand, telling her to stop. He lifted his long, shining spear at the serpent, threw it, and pierced the snake. All at once, a roaring black cloud surrounded the 3 men. The tallest spear thrower was a Thunder Man. The Thundermen took the woman to her father's home on an island. She married a 3rd son who was kind, quiet, and thoughtful. She gave birth to a son. The boy grew strong and used his thunder well. The woman asked Thunder Father if she could go home for a visit and take her son with her to meet her people. Thunder told her that she could take her son as long as he never used arrows. His son's arrows would turn to lightning and destroy people. The woman agreed. At first, her life went well. Thunder Boy was quiet and stayed close to his mother. The other children stayed away from him, for they did not know him. Then they began to jeer at him and laugh at him, saying that he did not know how to use an arrow or a bow. This made Thunder Boy very angry. He took a bow and an arrow and shot wide. It hit some trees and started a terrible fire. His grandfather swooped down, carried the boy to the sky where he is unable to hurt men. The woman stayed with her people. She lives alone and works with other women. Her beauty is no longer of interest to her, and she warns others to look into the heart for beauty. For the day the serpent was pierced, her heart was pierced also. The end of that one. Good to see you, Best. Moonchild and me. Mary Jean. And we go from Shawnee to Ottawa. Well, that didn't go well. The Legend of the Birch Tree. Long ago and not far away, a boy was born into a nice family. Before he could walk, a ceremony was held in his honor, a naming ceremony. He was given the name Wigwas. Wigwas was given many gifts from the Creator. One of those gifts was to help others in a good way. He not only helped his father hunt and fish, he also helped his mother pick wild berries and tend the garden. He helped the elderly not only in his village but in other villages. He would help make canoes and houses. One day, when he became a young man, he had to go to battle. In this battle, he lost his life. His brothers brought his body home and buried him. After they held a farewell ceremony, He was buried in a pure white buckskin on a hill just beyond his village. The following spring, his people noticed that a little tree began to grow at the side of his grave. As this tree grew tall, a dream came to the father of Wigwas. In this dream, he was told that Wigwas was still able to help his people, and the dream showed him how. In the springtime, you can take the sweet sap from him, and you can make syrup. You can peel the bark off to fashion food containers for keeping food and eating. You can make canoes, and you can use the bark to make lodges. You can make boxes and baskets from the strong wood. You can make toboggan, sleighs, and lodges. You can make fires so the people can keep warm and cook food. So, even in his death, Wigwas is still helping his people. Goodness purse. Let's try Comanche. Let's try the Comanche creation story. Oh, let's not. That's only like 3 sentences long. Skunk outwits Coyote. Coyote was going along one day feeling very hungry, and when he met up with Skunk, "Hello, brother," Coyote greeted him. "You look hungry, and so am I. If I lead the way, will you join me in a trek to get something to eat?" "I will do whatever you propose," said Skunk. "A prairie dog village is just over the hill. Go over there and lie down and play dead. I'll come along later and say to the prairie dogs, 'Come, let us have a dance over the body of our dead enemy.'" Skunk wondered how they would ever get anything to eat by playing dead and dancing. "Why should I do this?" he asked. "Come on," Coyote said. "Puff yourself up and play dead." So Skunk went on to the prairie dog village and pretended to be dead. After a while, Coyote came along and saw several prairie dogs playing outside their holes. They were keeping a distance between themselves and Skunk. "Oh, look," cried Coyote. "Our enemy lies dead before us. Come, we will have a dance to celebrate. Let everyone come out and then stop up the burrow holes." The foolish prairie dogs did as they were told. "Now," said Coyote, "let us all stand in a big circle and dance with our eyes closed. If anyone opens his eyes to look, he will turn into something bad." As soon as the prairie dogs began dancing with their eyes closed, Coyote killed one of them. "Well, now," he called out, "let's all open our eyes." The prairie dogs did so and were surprised to see one lying dead. "Oh dear," said Coyote, "look at this poor fellow. He opened his eyes and died. Now all of you close your eyes and dance again, and don't look, or you too will die." And then they began to dance once more, and one by one, the coyote drew them out of the dance circle and killed them. At last, one of the prairie dogs became suspicious and opened his eyes. "Oh, Coyote is killing us," he cried. And all the survivors ran to unstop their holes and seek safety in the burrows. Skunk then stood up, laughing at how easily Coyote had worked his trick. He helped gather up some dry firewood, and they began roasting the prairie dogs that Coyote had killed. The cooking meat smelled so good that Coyote decided he wanted to eat the best of it himself. Let's run a race, he said. The one that wins will have his choice of the most delicious prairie dogs. No, said Skunk, you are too swift. I'm a slow runner and can never beat you. Well, I will tie a rock to my foot, Coyote said. If you tie on a big rock, I will race you. And they decided to race around the bottom of the hill. While I am tying this rock to my foot, Coyote said, you go ahead. I'll give you a start and then catch you. Skunk began to run and was soon out of sight around the hill. Coyote tied a rock to his foot and followed, slowly at first, but he soon kicked the rock loose and doubled his speed. Along the way, however, Skunk had found a brush pile, and he dashed in there and hid. As soon as he saw Coyote go racing past, Skunk turned back to the fire. He raked all the roasted prairie dogs out of the coals, except for two small bony ones that he did not want. Then he cut off the tails and stuck them back in the ashes and carried the meat away to the brush pile. Meanwhile, Coyote was still loping over and around the hill, confident that Skunk was running just ahead of him. As he hurried along, he said to himself, I wonder where that fool Skunk is. I did not know that he could run so fast. And he soon circled back to the cooking fire and saw the prairie dog tails sticking out of the ashes. He seized one that slipped out. He tried another one. Oh, but they are well cooked, he said. He tried another one. Then he suspected something was wrong. Taking a stick, Coyote raked through the coals, but he found only the two bony prairie dogs that Skunk had rejected. Someone must have stolen our meat, he said, and then ate the two small tasteless ones. So Skunk, who by this time had feasted on delicious meat, had crept to the top of the hill and was looking down at Coyote. As Coyote began searching all around to see who might have stolen the meat, Skunk threw some prairie dog bones down upon him. Coyote glanced up and saw him. You took all the delicious prairie dogs, he cried. Give me some of them. No, Skunk answered. We ran a race for them. I beat you, and I'm going to eat all of them. Coyote begged and for some of the delicious prairie dogs, but while he was still pleading, Skunk swallowed the last morsel of meat. He was a better trickster than Coyote. Coyote the trickster. Hi, Monique. Did you charge up your phone? Prey and predator. Ladybug is a murderous beast to an outfit. Let's see. Arapaho. How Medicine Man resurrected buffalo. At one time, an Arapaho medicine man named Black Robe wanted very much to be able to make magic because his people were very hungry. How could he lure the buffaloes back to Arapaho hunting grounds? Buffalo meat was their principal food. So Black Robe decided to ask Cedar Tree for his help. Go west and hunt buffalo for our people. Try very hard to find at least one buffalo. Cedar Tree hunted hard as he was asked to do. After a long time, he saw some black objects at a distance. Could they be buffaloes, he wondered? Encouraged, he walked faster, but as he drew closer, he was less sure the black objects were buffaloes. Suddenly, he saw the black things fly toward the sky. By then, Cedar Tree seemed certain the objects were oversized ravens. Disappointed, he returned to his village, reporting to Blackrobe that what he had seen. The medicine man scolded him for not believing that what he had seen were buffaloes. If you had only believed strong enough, the buffaloes would not have changed to ravens, said Blackrobe. By now, the Arapahoes are desperately hungry. One woman, on the verge of starving, made soup from the soles of her moccasins. The next day, her uncle, Trying Bear, set out early to hunt for anything edible. He had no weapons. Fortunately, on the way, he met Blackrobe, who loaned him a bow and some arrows. Tomorrow morning, I will come to your tent to learn of your success, said Blackrobe. You must even try to find a dried buffalo, if not a live one. After hunting a long time to the northwest, Trying Bear finally found the dried buffalo. He ran home swiftly to tell his people. Blackrobe painted his white pony black and wrapped a black buffalo robe about himself. He stuck his lucky eagle feather in his hair, mounted his black pony, and took off in a rush to find the dried buffalo. Follow me, Trying Bear, Blackrobe called, because he wanted to see what Blackrobe would do with the dried buffalo. Trying Bear followed rapidly. Medicine Man arrived about midday at the place of the dead buffalo. He dismounted, took aim with his magic eagle feather, and threw it straight at the carcass. Immediately, a live buffalo jumped to its feet. Blackrobe turned and saw Trying Bear. Shoot it, commanded Medicine Bear. Trying Bear shot it dead. Let's skin it and carry everything edible back to our people, said Blackrobe. A feast of thanksgiving and rejoicing followed. Blackrobe had saved his people from starvation. And Arapahoes still love to tell this story of how their medicine man resurrected the dead buffalo with his magic eagle feather medicine. Hi, Brianna. I'll be right back. I have not heard the trumpet yet, but I am getting downloads that are reverberating in my skull right now. See what the crow have. About Red Shield and Running Wolf. Oh, that's a long one. That's good. Red Shield and Running Wolf. In the years past, the Sioux and the Crow were enemies, and only through heroic action could a young person of one tribe become the friend or lover of a young person of the other. Such was the story of Red Shield, the daughter first heard of running from a Sioux woman who had been captured by the Crows, and then later was permitted to return to her people. This woman had lived as a servant with Running Wolf's family during the time when the boy was growing up. He was a lazy boy, the woman told Red Shield. His father had to drive him out of bed every morning by rapping his shins with a stick. One morning he scolded the boy very hard and told him that he should not be hunting deer for the family, or should be out hunting deer for the family. And that morning, as soon as the father left the teepee, Running Wolf came to me and asked if I would make a buckskin mask for him. And so I made him a mask, and he spent the day painting it with white clay and fastening deer horns to it. Before sunrise the next morning, he was the first one out of bed. He took his father's gun and knife and rode away on a horse with two led horses behind him. He went out to a little lake near the village, fastened his horses in the woods, and then went down to a place where animals come to drink. And when the sun rose, some deer came by, but they did not run away because they thought the boy was a deer. He killed two, loaded them on the led horses, and brought them home just as his father was waking up. Was Running Wolf's father pleased by this? Red Shield asked. Oh, yes. He told his son that he had done well and should divide the venison with their neighbors. But that was not the end of it. The next morning, the boy went back to the watering place and returned with two more deer. And the morning after that, he did the same. The Sioux woman smiled. The time his father told him to stop, or he would begin to smell like a deer. And what did young Running Wolf say to this? He said nothing, but he began sleeping late again until one morning his father rapped him on the shins and scolded him for being lazy. His father told Running Wolf that he could no longer use the family's horses, that if he wanted a horse to ride, he would have to go out and take one from the Nez Perce. That morning, as soon as his father went hunting, Running Wolf came to me and asked if I would make him a new pair of moccasins. I did this for him, and he spent the day decorating them with paint and beads in some special way. At sundown, he left the teepee with his gun, not saying a word to anyone. Next morning, he returned with 20 horses that he had taken from the Nez Perce. His father must have been much pleased by this, said Red Shield. Oh, yes, after the boy gave them 10 of the horses, the father sang praise songs for him all day. But that was not the end of it. That night, Running Wolf went out again. The next morning, he brought back 40 horses and gave them all to his father. and the next night he captured 50 horses, all of which he gave to his father. And still a fourth night he went, and this time he brought back 80 head of horses, giving them all to his father. Oh, I can tell you, Running Wolf's father had a hard time herding all those horses. Stop, stop, he shouted at his son. You have listened too well to what I have told you. And Red Wolf laughed, or Red Shield laughed. I think I like this young Running Wolf, even if he is a crow, she said. Oh, but he soon grew up after that, the Sioux woman said. After his father died, his mother and I made a new teepee for him, and then I was told that I could return to my people. Running Wolf painted his teepee black, tied feathers to the door, and laid war bonnets and other finery around the inside to signify that he intended to become a mighty warrior. Not long after Red Shield heard these stories about Running Wolf, her father announced that the Sioux would be going out for the summer buffalo hunt. The tribe camped in the narrow valley down which some of the hunters would drive the buffalo, while others waited in concealment on either side to kill them as they passed. It was a busy time for Red Shield and the other women, young and old, for they helped in the skinning of the buffalo and then stretched the hides out to dry in the sun. One afternoon, while half the Sioux hunters were out searching for a buffalo herd, an alarm suddenly spread through the camp. Crow horse thieves are coming. Look to the horses. As soon as the men drove the horses in, it was the duty of the women and children to guard them, while the warriors went out to protect the camp from the Crow raid. Red Shield mounted her spotted pony and joined the other women. Far up the level valley, she could see the dust of the oncoming crows as they raced toward the line of defending Sioux. A moment later, she heard the sharp war cries of the contending warriors. She saw one of the Crow warriors on a black horse break through the Sioux line and come charging toward the horse herd she was helping to guard. Not far behind him, 2 Sioux warriors galloped in pursuit. As the Crow came nearer, she could see that he wore 4 eagle feathers in his hair. Fastened behind his belt was a streamer of black leather long enough to trail on the ground. His horse's mane and tail were whitened with clay. He carried a black-handled spear decorated with the bunches of crow feathers, and this weapon was pointed straight at Red Shield. She held her spotted horse steady, defying the onrushing crow, and at the last moment he reined in the black horse so that the point of the spear was only an arm's length from her body. The young crow's face was painted with streaks of black and white. For a moment he glared at Red Shield, his eyes very bright, and then he drew back his head and laughed. By this time his pursuers had caught up with him. One of the Sioux put an arrow to his bow, but missed. Then both of them closed in upon the Crow with their war clubs raised, ready to strike. Dancing his black horse in a circle, the Crow used his spear to knock first one and then the other Sioux off their mounts. His horse pawed the earth, then sprang like a cat into the Sioux horse herd. Before Red Shield or her companions could move, the Crow had cut 6 horses out of the herd and was chasing them off down the valley. Angry and frustrated because she could not do anything to stop the daring Crow, Red Shield watched him go. Then the young man turned and waved a farewell to her. Above the pounding hoofs, she could hear his laughter, and her indignation turned to grudging admiration. A group of Sioux warriors swept by intent upon pursuit, but Red Shield's father called them back. Too many of our hunters are away. We are too few to risk leaving our women and children and the horse herd open to another raid. Did you see that Crow? Cried old Sioux medicine man. He and his horse are under some powerful magic. The Sioux woman who had once been a captive among the Crows spoke up from the front of her teepee. I know that one, she said. What name does he go by? The medicine man asked. Yes, who is he? Demanded Red Shield's father. Running Wolf, he is called. Red Shield, who still sat on her spotted horse, whispered to herself, Running Wolf? I knew he must be Running Wolf. Not long after that, the Sioux returned to their village on the Missouri River. It seemed to all the young men in the tribe that the chief's daughter, Red Shield, had suddenly become a great beauty, and one by one they came by the chief's teepee to ask if she would marry them. Red Shield's father encouraged her to choose one of the suitors for a husband, but she wanted none of them. One evening, after she had rejected a handsome young warrior, her father demanded to know why she was so obstinate. "Because I do not love him," she cried, and in a fit of anger she threw her supper into the fire. "If you love someone else," her father said patiently, "then tell me his name." "I love only Running Wolf," she replied. "I will marry him." "You cannot marry Running Wolf. He is a crow, and crows are enemies." And her father thought that would put an end to it, but days passed without Red Shield saying a word, and she ate so little that she began to grow thin. At last he realized that his daughter was determined to marry Running Wolf or else will herself to die. "Very well," the chief said. "At least you are a woman of courage. You do not know if Running Wolf wants you for a wife, but you are determined to test him." The next morning, the chief brought around 2 fine horses, a mule, and some packs filled with moccasins and other presents. He summoned the Sioux woman who had once been a captive of the Crows and told her to go to Red Shield until they found the Crow camp where Running Wolf lived. They started out, and at the end of 3 days, they sighted the Crow teepees along a little stream. They rode into a thick wood where they fastened their horses and the pack mule. Red Shield painted herself carefully and dressed in her best clothing. By this time, night had fallen, but a full moon was rising above the trees. "It's time for me to go into the Crow camp," Red Shield said. "Remember to look for a black teepee," the Sioux woman reminded her. "You will see a bunch of eagle feathers fastened to the end of one of the poles." "If I don't return," Red Shield whispered, "you will know that Running Wolf does not want me for a wife, and I am a prisoner of the Crows, as you once were." "I will wait for you," the Sioux woman said. Red Shield walked out of the woods and entered the bright moonlight which flooded the Crow camp. In the middle of the camp, she found a black teepee with eagle feathers fastened to the top of the poles. No one noticed her as she walked to the open entrance. Inside, some young men were talking and smoking around the campfire. Red Shield was certain that one of them was Running Wolf. She sat down outside the entrance, and after a while the young men began to leave, 1 or 2 at a time, paying no particular attention to her presence. Then Running Wolf came out to stretch himself and yawn. The moonlight was full on his face, and Red Shield felt her heart beat strongly. He saw her then, and he said in Crow, "Come in." But Red Shield understood that not one word of Crow, and she neither answered him nor moved. Running Wolf shrugged and went back inside, and Red Shield heard him say something else. The voice of an old woman responded. Red Shield arose then and went into the teepee. The fire had died to a few coals, and she could see only the shadowy forms of Running Wolf and his mother. She went close to the fire and sat down as though to warm herself. This time the old woman spoke to her in Crow. "Take off your moccasins and rest." But of course Red Shield did not understand. "Build up the fire so that we can see this young woman," said Running Wolf. His mother placed some dry wood on the coals, and a blaze sprang up to light the inside of the teepee. "This is not a Crow woman," cried Running Wolf's mother. "No," he said, "but I know who she is. Only one time have I seen her, but her face has been in my dreams many times since. She is Sioux." Red Shield raised her head, made signs to tell them she could not understand what they were saying, but that she had a friend nearby who could speak for her. At last Running Wolf understood, and he followed her outside the camp, clearing into the thick woods, where the Sioux woman was waiting with the horses and mule. Running Wolf remembered the former captor of his boyhood, and when they returned to his teepee, the Sioux woman and his mother had a happy reunion. "Why do you and this daughter of a Sioux chief come into our camp?" the mother asked. She is Red Shield, replied the Sioux woman. She has brought many presents. She has come to marry your son Running Wolf. And what does my son Running Wolf have to say to this? To marry one of the enemy? And Running Wolf looked at Red Shield. I knew she was beautiful, and she showed courage that day I took horses from the Sioux. Now she has shown more bravery than I have been or have ever dared by coming into the camp of her enemies alone. I want her for my wife. And while the Sioux woman was bringing in the packs of presents, Running Wolf's mother went through the camp. Come and look at my son's wife, she cried. One of the enemy's children has come to marry him. All the crows in camp came to see Red Shield, and all said she was very good looking and a young woman of great bravery. Early the next morning, the Sioux woman started back on the long journey to the Missouri River to tell the girl's people that she was safe and was now the wife of a Crow warrior, Running Wolf. A few days later, Red Shield's father, the Sioux chief, sent 2 messengers to the Crow chief, telling him that he and many of his relatives were coming to pay the Crows a friendly visit. For this event, the Crows moved their teepees to a larger plain beside a lake, camping in a tight circle so as to leave room for the visitors. The Crow chief told Running Wolf to put his black teepee in place of honor in the center. And when the Sioux arrived, the Crows surrounded them and watched them put up their teepees. After this was done, Red Shield took Running Wolf to welcome her parents, and they all exchanged many presents. Running Wolf brought several guns and the horses he had taken from the Sioux and gave them to Red Shield's father. For 4 days and nights, the Sioux camped with the Crows, and the tribes danced together every evening. And after the Sioux returned to the Missouri River, Running Wolf and Red Shield and several of their friends visited them from time to time, and in the moons of pleasant weather, her Sioux father and mother came to visit their daughter, and later on to see their grandchildren. In both tribes, a young Crow warrior and his Sioux wife were regarded as hero and heroine, and their people lived in peace for a time. And we will have time for just one more story. Let us go with the why is it not showing it? Powhatan. The Powhatan. Why the Indians have so many tribes. So many moons ago that one cannot count them. All of our people lived underground. We lived in total darkness. Our animals lived with us. One of our animals was very brave. This was a ground mole. One day the mole crawled far, far away from all of us. It crawled up, and after a long time it saw a hole. The mole crawled through that hole and saw light. It saw trees and rivers and sky. Here there was no darkness. Here there was beauty and light all around. The mole crawled back through the hole as fast as it could. The mole told our people of the wonders it had seen. Alas, the light had made it blind. That is why all moles are blind to this day. Our people were so excited. There was a light out there. There was beauty. We could hardly wait to climb out and see for ourselves. And that is just what we did. Indian after Indian climbed through that hole. Our people saw the world in all its beauty for the first time. More and more Indians came out of the hole and into the wonderful world. But then a terrible thing happened. A very fat Indian got stuck in the hole. Our people tried pushing. Our people tried pulling. Push, pull, push, and pull some more. But the fat Indian was stuck for good. So all of the people did not leave the darkness. But we who did keep walking on and on. Soon we came to a river. A beautiful bird flapped its wings 3 times. The waters of the river parted. We walked across the dry path of the river. Many, many of us crossed the river, but lo, after a while the bird flew away. The waters came back together, and some of our people could not get across. After several moons, we came to a very high mountain. Some kind deer led us across a rocky, high mountain, but pretty soon some eagles chased the deer away. Many of my people did not cross the mountain. Those of us who did make it across the mountain soon found ourselves in the thickest forest in the world. We could not even see each other because of all the trees. We tried to stay together, but we could not. A few of us went this way, a few of us went that way. All over the place we were scattered. And that is why to this very day we all live in different places. And there you have it. And I have to go get ready for Easter dinner. So I hope you all enjoyed. And we can do this again next week if you like. Welcome all. Hope you enjoyed it. And I will see you next week. Well, Wednesday anyway. I'll be here.